This time I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the right attitude to have about making mistakes. Now, nobody wants to make mistakes. Okay, obviously, it's not part of being a good guitar player. In fact, it usually is a sign of, for a lot of us, it feels like it's the opposite of being a good guitar player. In fact, a lot of people, for quite understandably, for good reason, are very terrified even of making a mistake, or even more terrified of making a mistake in front of other people. Okay, and that's what practice time is for, really. You have to actually make mistakes. That's the thing, is mistakes aren't something that we want to avoid necessarily. Of course, we do in performance, especially when it matters, when there are people who have paid to watch your performance. You don't want to mess up on stage. You don't want to mess up when the clock is running and you're in the studio. There's a lot of times you don't want to make a mistake. And ultimately, we don't want to make mistakes. But remember that the mistake is the thing that allows you to see what you did wrong. If you didn't make mistakes, you would never be able to learn from anything. And that's actually, unfortunately, what happens. For those who are afraid of making mistakes, a lot of the time, that actually leads to not doing whatever that skill was where they made the mistake. Because let's face it, we don't want to do anything poorly. You want to play the guitar well. You don't want to just play, you don't want to play it crappy. No one wants to suck at the guitar. And it feels like I suck whenever you make mistakes, especially if you have a tendency to kind of beat yourself up about it. But I'm here to tell you, go easy on yourself. You have to make mistakes. You're doing yourself a favor by making mistakes if you're listening and looking for what you did or didn't do that needs to happen in that technique before you can actually accomplish it. What actually, if you do understand the mechanics of what you're trying to do, because if you do, that's what you need to ultimately figure out. What didn't happen that should have happened? Because if you almost did it, if something even slightly resembling what was supposed to come out came out, then you're onto something. Keep working with it. That's something you have to do. You've got to keep butchering it for a little while, really, and work it out. It's worth doing it, because all those skills that you might think you don't ever do, all those skills that you don't touch because you're not good at them, you could get good at them. It's completely within your grasp. But the thing is, you won't get good at them if you stay away from them because you didn't do them well. And ultimately, the desire to not make mistakes is a very strong one, and it's totally understandable why people would stay away from the things they don't do well. And that's why a lot of guitar players don't reach really high skill levels. It's, we want to be good, but we don't want to suck along the way. And that's the hard part for most people, is to keep that determination going and to have the patience with yourself to play things you're not very good at. So one way that you can get around this is, once you have some things that you've gotten pretty good at, if you can do a couple things, do that. Do those things. Do them well. Have fun. Don't ever stop having fun. That is the part. And I don't mean don't ever do anything that might not be fun. I just mean never go too long without making sure that you're having some fun on the instrument too. Sometimes you need to slow down a little bit, though, in order to think fast enough to do whatever it is you're trying to do on the guitar. You might want it to come flying out really, really fast, but maybe your fingers aren't really coordinated enough under your brain's control to quite do that cleanly yet. Do it anyway. Do it all sloppy as hell. Just rip up the fretboard, even if you can't really quite do it yet. Just do it. Get it out of your system. Have some fun with it. Really enjoy it. And then, have some fun with it, but slow down after that. And then see if you can do it at a slow level. What would it sound like slower? How slow do you have to play it cleanly? And then push the speed back up again. Past the ceiling, till it falls apart again. And bring it back down. See if you can play it faster than last time when you slowed it down after that. Still slow it down, but maybe not as much. Move it around. That's the thing where people miss out with the idea with tempo and making mistakes. You don't just start slow and then go real fast and then you stop. Because by the time you got real fast, you were probably screwing up all over the place. And you just practiced how to do it wrong And if you practiced it over and over again from slow to fast, then you just practiced how to do it wrong a whole bunch of times in a row. So don't do it that way. Instead, jump around between different tempos. You know, you have to have a little bit of slow in there so that you can think. What you're doing is not just playing fast. In fact, what you're doing, even while playing fast, is you're thinking really fast. You have to program your brain to process information faster. And that's what you're ultimately doing as you get better and better at the guitar, is that your brain is getting stronger. It can handle more information and process it more quickly. And it can command your fingers and hands to do specific motions that are very rehearsed, very, very quickly and more cleanly, and more control. So this all comes back, though, to being able to experience the motions in a rhythmic context at multiple speeds, okay? And now I'm talking about rhythms and tempos and stuff, so part of that does in fact mean use a metronome, but I don't mean that you should use a metronome all the time, and I also don't mean that you should use the metronome even at first. At first, just count how many notes your little phrase should have. Think rhythmically, you know. There's no use in practicing phrases that are nearly impossible to fit into any kind of normal musical situation. So groups of 5, groups of 7, save them for later when you're into prog and tech metal and stuff. And, you know, unless that's all you want to do is odd time signatures, stick with 4s, 6s, and 3s. Most of the music in all of the world, when it comes to straight rhythms at least, is really broken down into one of those 3. You know, and anything beyond that, you know, is still just more 3s, 4s, and 6s. So when you take, you know, whatever it is you're going to practice, do it in some kind of a rhythmic context so that you can speed it up and slow it down and actually experience the groove that it's supposed to have. Remember, there is supposed to be a certain accenting pattern that emulates a rhythmic feel. You're not just moving your fingers, and you're not just reciting notes steadily. There's more to rhythm than that. There's an accenting pattern that makes it breathe and come alive. Okay, so by slowing things down and then speeding them up, you can actually, you know, you can get the feel for what you want it to be. So let's say if I was playing with this little minor scale thing, I'm going to be in B minor here. I'm going to start with my 12th fret, 12, 14, 15 on the second string, and then again on the first string, 12, 14, 15. I'm just going to ascend those 6 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, like that, it's going to be boring. There's nothing important in the rhythm. It's just 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 for all we can tell. There's no accompanying beat. So unless I do something specifically with the accenting, it's not going to feel like anything. It's going to just be annoying and staccato. But if I, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, and 2, and 3, and 1, and 2, and 3, and I'm accenting it more like it's 8th notes in 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 1, and 2, and 3. Extra emphasis on 1. That's the key right there. It's not about just playing steadily, but also let the listener know where the beat 1 is every time, so they can, when they're nodding along, they know what they're, you know, what they're nodding along to, or if they're headbanging or moshing or whatever they're doing. They need to understand where the beat is, especially if it's music they've never heard before. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2. As you get faster and faster and faster, that accent's also going to save your ass. You're not even going to know where you are in that thing when those notes start flying by really fast. So that one really important note that comes by is not just there for your listener, it's for you. You won't know where you are in there unless you keep that accent there, because that's ultimately how you start counting, when you start thinking in whole phrases at a time. So keep this stuff in mind, but slow it back down, because by the time, if I just, all right, falling apart, if I just leave it there and go on to something else, where have I really gotten with that? So if you see my logic there, you want to, because if you start falling apart, you should probably look at your picking first, because more than likely that's where it all falls apart. That's really, alternate picking especially is simple as all hell in theory, but when it comes down to it, it's not simply down, up, down, up, down, up. I have to be in any number of places at any given time going in one of 2 different directions, so it doesn't, you know, in reality it doesn't always work out so conveniently, but it is always down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, and that's one thing you can always rely on. So in that sense, you can probably look at your picking if it's, once it starts falling apart, and see, okay, what should the alternate picking be? If I start on a downstroke It's 6 notes, so that means every single 6 notes should start again on a downstroke. If it doesn't, I'm doing it wrong, okay? So this happens a lot of time if you accidentally find yourself economy picking. It's a very common problem, is that you get in the habit of just down, up, down, down. Don't use economy picking off the bat. Start to make alternate picking more of your default picking. There's a place for economy picking, but economy picking, the only problem with economy picking, the reason I say that you should start with alternate picking and not economy picking, is that economy picking is a very case-by-case basis. It's very difficult to predict exactly what pick stroke you're going to be playing on any given note. Whereas with alternate picking, as long as I stay consistent with it, I can really predict exactly what the pick stroke is going to be thousands of pick strokes out. I know that pick stroke 1017 is going to be a downstroke if I started on a downstroke, because it's an odd number. I only have down and up. So whatever I start on, all the odd numbers are going to be that kind of pick stroke, and all the even numbered beats are going to be the other pick stroke. So that's just the basics of alternate picking. So from a rhythmic standpoint, it also has this back and forth motion, which helps to keep rhythms steady. So all that stuff together anyway. Getting back to mistakes then, okay? When you practice something, you can slow down and listen to what you're doing a little bit more closely. You have to slow it down. And in order to know you need to slow it down, you need to make mistakes. You have to make mistakes. It is absolutely essential for you as a guitar player to be able to progress as fast as possible, that you make mistakes and then determine why you're making them. Because that's the key. You're not just learning how to play the guitar. You're solving problems that present themselves when trying to play the guitar. It's a little bit of a different distinction, but it's all the difference in the world that you need to start making much faster progress in your practice time, because you're actually looking for what you could do more efficiently and how. You know, so if it's picking, let's say if you're picking around 2 different strings, you may, really look at it really close, see how sharp you can cut that angle. And there's no way you can do this at a high speed. You won't possibly be able to get anywhere close to the level of quality that you need to be paying attention at a fast rate. So it's not about just, when I always cringed when I would hear my guitar teachers and guitar legends say, you gotta start practicing it slow. It's like, oh God, not again. Nobody wants to play slow. It's exciting to play fast. More than like you picked up your guitar because somebody playing fast impressed you, or at least partially your reason. No one wants to sit around and play stuff that's supposed to be played fast, real slow. The trick is slow down once in a while. Slow down slowly enough that you can hear what's going on. If you can't count what you're doing, you're going too fast. If you're playing faster than you can think, you're flailing. Okay? Remember that word, flailing. Don't flail. Count. Everything should be a quantity. That way it all fits. And that way, even if no one else is around to play along with you, no drums, no other instruments, you can just start generating that beat. One, two, three, 1, 2, 3. That's really all I'm counting that whole time. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's that groove. But I didn't get there starting at that pace. I practiced this, I practiced the picking like that. With the scales, I practiced it's a little piece at a time. I didn't fly across the entire scale right away, because there's no way I could possibly even think of all that stuff at once. It's 5 different shapes. So I started with each of the shapes. Little manageable pieces that are bite-sized. Remember, you're not programming your fingers nearly as much as you're programming your brain. So your brain needs to pick up on the mistakes. It needs to pick up on why is it so hard. And more than likely it's because you're trying to bite off more than your brain can chew. So just take little pieces. If it's the scale, if it's the fretboard that's overwhelming you, just do 6 notes at a time. Or if it's 2 note per string scales, do 4 notes at a time. Do something rhythmic. Maybe 8 notes at a time if you're ready to move on to something more complex. But start simple. Start with little bite-sized pieces so that they ask to be played in a rhythm. You need a rhythmic pattern, or else it's just going to be boring. No one's going to want to listen to that. And there's no point practicing something that cannot be made musical. So practice stuff that's always in rhythmic lengths. I'm Jason with Shred Mentor Rock Guitar Academy, and until next time, rock on.